Alright guys, I'm gonna be honest with you on this one. This is a little weird for me. I mean, not only because this is my very first Ultraman toy ever, but also because, well, I never expected to get a brand new toy of this guy ever. And now, he stands before me and it's kind of surreal. So, share the surreal moment with me as I review Ultra Act Gridman, or as you probably know him, Servo from Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, a show I reviewed a while back for TJTV. If you haven't watched it, why not? Go. I'm funny. Well, don't go now. We got a toy to review now, but, later on. Later on. If you don't mind the foul language I like to spit in those videos. Anyway, forget that. Forget the cheap plugs. Let's get to the toy itself. That's why you clicked on the video, right? So, head sculpt. Look at that. I mean, it is unusual for the Ultra Act line. You usually don't have this many sculpted in details, especially not this robotic. So he really stands out. But the familiar Ultraman stuff is here. The molded in mouth, the yellow eyes, the fin on the head, as well as the red and silver combination, which looks really good here, and really nice in that metallic silver from Bandai. A little bit of, well, it's not gold really on the crest, is it? It's more of a metallic yellow. Yes, there's a difference. I'll explain it later. Here's the chest. Chest also looking really nice. There's a center piece that doesn't quite glow the way it really should. It's supposed to be a yellow gem, but I don't know. It doesn't quite shine the way I think it really needs to. The blue does, though. The blue so does. Translucent blue, giving it a nice layer of depth. Very cool. Really like how that looks. Really like the high shoulder armor, too. Speaking of the arms, let's move down to the right cuff, where we get some yellow, breaking up the, to this point, silver and red design. White, too. It's a nice mix. As well as over here on the left, it's the acceptor from Gridman. Very nicely detailed, though I had to check to see, was it really that flat in the show? Now that I've asked, someone will comment on it and correct me. In fact, I'm sure about 30 people will have corrected me by the time I check. But it does have a lot of detail to it, and it looks really cool. So that's all that matters, really. I want to show you the back, too, because speaking of cool details, it's the battery case. I mean, look, there's the rough spot where your thumb pushes it down, the arrow showing you which way it goes. The original toy did have a battery pack in the back, even if the US toy didn't. So that's kind of hysterical that they actually molded that in to make it accurate. I love it. It's so pointless, but it's funny. A little bit of black now. We're still breaking up the red here. A little bit of, it looked like treads on his hips. Kind of odd. Never noticed that before. I don't know. Not a bad detail, though. Here's the white thigh-high boots. A little bit of red breaking up. More yellow. Down to the cuff at the ankle. And some black-soled shoes just to round it off. This is very unusual for the Ultra Act line, which is used to a lot of red and silver bodysuits. In the lineup, he really does stand out as something of an oddball with all of his robotic armor details. But that also makes him really cool. And of course, it's highly accurate to the show in far better proportion than his original toy. But enough about detail and accuracy, let's talk articulation. Because that's what these toys always had up on Power Rangers. They actually had working joints. And this is no different. Because keep in mind, the Ultra Act line is really just a separate Figuarts line for Tsuburaya Productions toys. So, they have a lot of the same joints. For instance, the double-jointed neck with a ball joint on top and bottom, allowing rotation, tilting, all kinds of expressive motions, though his high collar does keep him from rotating his head too far. You can also see, as I just accidentally tapped, the shoulder armor has a lot of jointage to it. Not only does it fold up to stay out of the way, both parts of the silver armor are individually jointed. So, you can pose his shoulder any way you want, and none of it is ever going to get in the way of anything. Very cool detail to work in. You get the bicep swivel. Of course you do. You also get a double-jointed elbow that's not the best I've seen. gets the job done, it gets you some nice poses, but for some reason it just doesn't quite have the clearance I've seen on other figure arts, which is a little strange, not off-putting though. You get the standard wrist articulation, that is, there's a joint here, there's a ball joint in the wrist, as well as a hinge that moves it up and down. You'll excuse the scratch on the thumb, I've been customizing a toy lately, and it got me. There's one piece of rotation that I really love though, one swivel joint in particular, and it's in the cuff, actually. Now, I kind of expected the figure art thing where this would just kind of slide around on an external toy and it's just like a cuff. But no, it's a part of his arm. Like, it's an actual independent piece with a swivel joint inside of it, which is so much better. I don't feel like I'm forcing or flexing any plastic by moving it around the arm. That is such a relief. Such a small touch, but it works. It's hard to explain. I like it, though. The downside to the articulation is there really isn't any rotation in the chest or the waist, so he really doesn't have a waist joint to speak of. Oh, he's got a hinge, so his chest and his waist can bend backward and forward. That's it. Nothing else besides that. No rotation at all, which is weird. He does get the figure art hip trick of extending down to move out to the side farther, as well as a ball-jointed hip, which is good. Swivel at the thigh. Yeah, you also get that same swivel at the top of the boot. Double-jointed knees. Of course you got double-jointed knees, right along with that floating kneecap. As well as ankles. Ball-jointed, so they tilt in all directions. This is also kind of an individual hinge, so it doesn't get in the way, though it doesn't really want to move all that much. Well, it's not hindering all that much, though. You can still get some nice poses. And then there's the toe articulation, because that always finishes it off quite nicely, doesn't it? Tons of articulation, aside from that weird chest issue. Get the sideways. There's a ball joint in there. That's nice. Still, barely any rotation, which is kind of lame. But there's still plenty of poses out of him. It's not quite figure art, but it's got most of the best tricks. So let's give it a pass on this one. It's still really good. It's still better than the original toy. But let's see what else he comes with, because the other thing that excelled about Samurai Squad toys was accessory count. And Ultra Act Gridman is no exception. We get an array of hands. Of course we get an array of hands. You get the splayed open, which are actually quite more splayed than usual. Still, looks good, like it. And you also get two sets of holding hands, narrow and wide, which we do need for the actual weapon accessories. And we start our look at those with the Plasma Blade, his basic sword weapon in the series. And you'll notice something right off the bat. Not Bandai Silver, Vac Metal Chrome. Very different. Like, we don't usually get that. Very strange. I had a hard time figuring out the last time I saw Vac Metal Chrome on a figure art style toy. I still can't quite remember where the last time I saw it was. Still, it gives it more of a metallic look. It looks like a sword, and in a weird way, it has more of a digital effect to it that way. The only thing that bugs me, I can kind of see my reflection in it. That, and the fact that Vac Metal isn't known to stand up to time or impact very well, so this makes me a little bit more cautious typically. The detailing on it, though, is very, very simple, since this is the basic sword. All you really get is the gem at the top, and a little bit of line detail on the grip. A little bit of blue down there, just to, I don't know, break up the black a little bit? I don't know. Very small detail. Very simple sword, but it does get better. How about the other accessory he's known for most? The barrier shield. And again, a little bit of Vac Metal, this time traced around that center yellow gem, though it's not really a gem here. Replicates the shape of the chest, actually. Very cool piece, very nicely colored. Plenty of Bandai Silver on this one. What I like about it is that, A, the back of the shield has the blue detailing that'll come into effect later on. I'll explain when we get there, don't worry. And it also has a hinge. This allows Gridman to hold it in any position and it still remains face forward, which is a cool detail to add. It gives you a lot more options to pose it rather than just sticking the shield straight out. Very worthy companion to the Plasma Blade. But when a basic shield and sword isn't going to cut it, you need a bigger cutting implement. That's where this comes in. The Denko Raigeki Ken Gridman sword. A combination of the two, which is why the blue on the back is so important on the shield There's the detailing, just as they combined in the original toys and show. It is a beautiful little touch to add. Even the same chrome on the back piece here. All the details matching up in every dimension, and it is awesome. Always love the effect of this sword. Love the look of it. Very cool looking sword. Looks awesome in his hands, and it's the reason he comes with those larger hands for holding things, while the narrow ones are more suited to the typical plasma blade. The one downside to the accessory count, he doesn't have the axe. Such a letdown. They have all these really nice accessory parts, but they're missing one of the weapons. Oh well. But when it's time to finish off a monster once and for all, there is no substitute. It's time to reach for your effect part, and in this case, it's the grid beam, represented here in very nice translucent orange with a beautiful gradient across it, giving it this very hot flame look. Very, very cool, and appropriately 2D considering the effects they used in that show. Also, really, really like the blast effect at the base. Look at that. Very nice. I can't even tell if it's yellow with a little bit of orange on the tips or orange with a little bit of yellow on the tips. Paint-wise, I mean. Either way, it looks cool. It's a very cool blast effect. Though, I will say, these things are very, very thin and very, very sharp. Be very careful in handling and storing. I'd be worried about breaking and bodily harm with this thing. Now you'll notice there's a weird shaped plug-in on this, and that's because, of course, it's fired from his wrist device. What was a wrist communicator here? It's the acceptor in the Gridman. This is a little bit tricky. You need fingernails for this, which kind of sucks because I trim mine before reviews. But that little tiny gem can be removed, leaving a gap where that plugs in. Kind of tricky that way. Just make sure you don't lose that gem in the meantime. Does look really cool though. The effects from Gridman look 2D already, so this actually looks like it's popping right out of the screen. If you'll excuse the redundancy, probably one of the more effective effect parts I've ever seen. If you're a child of the 90s and you grew up on American dubbed tokusatsu, then this is a must-have for you. Yes, there's a few slight jointage problems and a missing accessory, unfortunately. But other than that, he is a spectacular figure, very representative of the character from the show, and keeping in the tradition of having very, very articulate, very awesome toys. If you looked in the right places, you could actually have a pretty epic collection of 90s American tokusatsu built up by now. We are pretty much one Beef Fighter and one Dragon Ranger short of having a very awesome and epic 90s toku collection going here. Mine, of course, came from Hobby Link Japan, and if you're looking to scratch a little bit of a Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad itch, that is the place to go. And get in on it now because there is so much stuff coming out. We're getting an armor upgrade for this guy to turn him into Thunder Gridman, who you knew as Synchro in the original Samurai Squad show. And we are also getting God Xenon, the robot that armor set also formed. I really like how Gridman is becoming something of a subline inside the Ultra Act line. Who knows what other stuff they're going to come out with. And it all starts here, people. Get in on it now. It's going to be awesome.